Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Bol. Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. He built the house in which the whole world could live. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Verse 10. Haribo. Feels weird, no? Everybody's not wearing mask anymore. You'll probably get nightmare after this. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjanam Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjanam Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjanam Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjanam Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivacharya Astuttara Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivacharya Astuttara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastabhutale Srimati Tamar Krishna Goswami Namne. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastabhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Distarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayed Nasta Praishu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Hare Krishna, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 9, Detachment from all that is material. We're going to do from text 4 to 10. We will chant 10. Just wait until... No internet? Anyway. Canto 11, General History. Text 4. Yeah, let's start there. I'll chant and read 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 10 we will chant together. Okay? Text 4. Dvaveva chintaya muktau paramananda aplutau yo vimukto jado balo yogunebhya param gataha. Translation. In this world, two types of people are free from all anxiety and merged in great happiness. One who is a retarded and childish fool, and one who has approached the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the three modes of material nature. It's a purport. Those who fervently seek material sense gratification are gradually pushed down into a miserable condition of life, because as soon as one even slightly violates the laws of nature, one must suffer sinful reactions. Thus, even materially alert and ambitious persons are constantly in anxiety, and from time to time they are plunged into great misery. Those who are nonsensical and retarded, however, live in a fool's paradise, and those who have surrendered to Lord Krishna are filled with transcendental bliss. Therefore, both the fool and the devotee may be said to be peaceful in the sense that they are free from the ordinary anxiety of the materially ambitious person. However, this does not mean that the devotee and the retarded fool are on the same platform. A fool's peace is like that of a dead stone, whereas a devotee's satisfaction is based on perfect knowledge. Text 5. Kvachit kumari tu atmanam vrinanam griham agatan swayam dan arhayam asa kvapiyateshu bandhushu. Once a marriageable young girl was alone in her house because her parents and relatives had gone that day to another place. At that time, a few men arrived at the house, specifically desiring to marry her. She received them with all hospitality. Text 6. Tesham abhyavaharartam shalin rakhisi partiva avaknantya prakoshtastas chakru shanka swanam mahad. The girl went to a private place and began to make preparations so that the unexpected male guests could eat. As she was beating the rice, the conch shell bracelets on her arms were colliding and making a loud noise. Text 7. Sataj jugupsitam matva mahati vridita tataha babanjai kai kasha shankan dvau dvau panyor asheshayat. The young girl feared that the men would consider her family to be poor because their daughter was busily engaged in the menial task of husking rice. Being very intelligent, the shy girl broke the shell bracelets from her arms, leaving just 2 on each wrist. Text 8. Ubayorapi abudgosho hi avaknantya swasankayoho tatrapi ekam nirabidat ekasmanabhavadvani. Thereafter, as the young girl continued to husk the rice, the 2 bracelets on each wrist continued to collide and make noise. Therefore, she took 1 bracelet off each arm, and with only 1 left on each wrist, there was no more noise. Text 9. Anvashiksham imam tasya upadesham arindama lokan anucharanyetan lokatattva vivitsaya. O subduer of the enemy, I travelled throughout the surface of the earth, learning constantly about the nature of this world, and thus I personally witnessed the lesson of the young girl. Purport: the Brahmana sage here explains to King Yadu that he is not presenting theoretical knowledge. Rather, by wandering throughout the world, the observant and thoughtful Brahmana has personally experienced the lessons learned from all of the above-mentioned gurus. Thus, instead of posing himself to be omniscient like God, he humbly explains that he has faithfully learned these lessons in his travels. Text 10. Let's chant together. Vase bahunam kala bhaved varta dvayo api ekaha eva vased tasmat kumaryaha iva kankanaha. Vase bahunam kalaho Vase bahunam kalaho Bhaver varta dvayorapi Bhaver varta dvayorapi Eka eva vaset tasmat Eka eva vaset tasmat Kumarya eva kankanaha Kumarya eva kankanaha. Vase bahunam kalaho Bhaved varta dvayorapi Eka eva vaset tasmat Kumarya eva kankanaha. Vase bahunam kalaho eva kankana. Eka eva vaset tasmat Kumarya eva kankana. Vase bahunam kalaho Bhavet varta dvayorapi Eka eva vaset tasmat Kumarya eva kankana. Vase bahunam kalaho bhavet varta dvayorapi eka eva vase tasmat kumaya eva kankanaha. Vase bahunam kalaho bhave varta dvayorapi eka eva vase tasma kumaya eva kankana. Vase, in a residence, bahunam, of many people, kala, quarrel, bhavet, will be, varta, conversation, dvayo, of two people, api, even, eka, alone, eva, certainly, vaset, one should live, tasmad, therefore, kumaryaha, of the young girl, eva, like, kankanaha, the bracelet. Translation purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura, you want to read the translation?
When many people live together in one place, there will undoubtedly be quarreling. And even if only two people live together, there will be frivolous conversation and disagreement. Therefore, to avoid conflict, one should live alone, as we learn from the example of the bracelet of the young girl. Report. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given a nice example in this regard. Because the young girl mentioned in this story had no husband, she had to fulfill her duties as a host by removing her bracelets, so that each wrist held one bracelet only. In the same way, the process of jnana yoga, or spiritual advancement by philosophical speculation, demands that the speculating sages live alone, without any other association. Since jnanis have dedicated their lives to speculation, there will undoubtedly be endless argument and quarreling on technical points if many jnanis live together. Therefore, to keep a peaceful atmosphere, they must live alone. On the other hand, a king's daughter, who has been duly married to an aristocratic prince, fulfills her duties to her husband by dressing herself attractively with innumerable ornaments and approaching him for love. Similarly, the goddess of devotion, Bhakti Devi, decorates herself with the innumerable ornaments of the Vaishnavas, who come together to relish the sweet sound of the holy name of the Lord. Because pure Vaishnavas do not intimately associate with non-devotees, it may be said that they reside alone, and thus they also fulfill the purpose of this verse. There cannot be any quarrel among pure Vaishnavas, because they are on the real platform of desirelessness, not wanting even salvation or mystic powers, what to speak of sense gratification. Because they are all devotees of Krishna, they may freely associate with one another for glorifying the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 3.25-34, Naikatmatam me sprihayanti kechin matpada seva birata madiha ye nyonyato bhagavata prasajya sabhajayante mama paurusani. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and who always engages in the service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee who is unflinchingly engaged always glorifies my pastimes and activities.
Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented on this verse as follows. The young girl in the story kept only one bracelet on each wrist so that there would be no noisy conflict among the bracelets. Similarly, one should give up the association of those who are not devoted to the Supreme Lord. This is the actual lesson to be learned. A real Vaishnava is always pure and faultless in character. However, in those places where non-devotees congregate, there will undoubtedly be envious criticism of the devotional service of the Lord, and those who falsely attempt to analyze reality without the Supreme Personality of Godhead will create much disturbing noise in the name of philosophy. Therefore, one should remain in those places where the Supreme Lord is properly worshipped according to the Vedic standard. If everyone is dedicated to glorifying the personality of Godhead, Krishna, there will not be any impediment in mutual association. However, in a place where people have many different purposes besides the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, social dealings will certainly be disrupted.
One should therefore avoid the association of those who are inimical to devotional service. Otherwise, one will be frustrated in achieving the spiritual purpose of life. One who always keeps himself in the company of the devotees of the Lord is actually living alone. If one lives in a community where the only consideration is the pleasure of the Lord, then one can avoid the contradictory situations caused by many persons competing to satisfy their own material desires. This is the lesson intelligently understood by the Brahmana from the bracelets of the young girl. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya quotes the following: Asajjanaistu sangvaso na kartavya katanchana yavad yavachcha bahubhi sajjanai sa tu muktidaha. One should not under any circumstances live with those who are not devotees of the Lord. On the other hand, one should stay with many devotees, because such association awards liberation.
Om Ajnanatamrandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karati Vachalam Pangum Lange Degirim Yadgipadamam Vande Shri Gurundinataranam Paramanandamadam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Savodita Gododaya Pushmanta Chitra Sandutamanuda. So this particular section is mainly about association, but prior to that we read a couple of verses on the child. Now Krishna is actually explaining to Uddhava about detachment. This chapter is detachment from all that is material. So through knowledge, he's teaching Uddhava by at the same time telling a lot of different stories. And that once, Krishna is saying once an ancestor of his, who's that? King Yadu, ancestor, yeah. So then King Yadu comes across this Avadut Brahmana and he starts asking him questions. And one of the question is, how did you become so detached? And of course he asked many other questions, but that's one of the questions. And then the Brahmana, then he explains how that he has learned many things from his 24 gurus, and most of it is how he became detached. And then of course in this verses, in the beginning is about the child. So the Brahmana actually learns from that foolish child how to become free from anxiety. And once you're free you from anxiety, it's easy to focus your mind on the worship, on the personality of Godhead, like that. And in doing so, one can then achieve the highest goal. Now, of course, in verse 4 we read that the child that is or foolish person is considered retarded, meaning they are intellectually challenged. And then it also says in the purport how violation of the laws of nature happens due to ignorance. Generally, ignorance is the root cause of many sinful activities or violation of the laws of nature in our society and so on. And when you are ignorant of the law of nature, you will perform your material desires. Not knowing what is good or bad, it leads to material desires, and mostly it could be sinful desires. And that sinful desire leads to sinful acts. We call that papam. No? It manifests like that, and which leads to then sinful action and suffering at the same time. So therefore, papa produces two reactions, prarabdha and aprarabdha. Prarabdha means it manifests, and aprarabdha means it's unmanifested. Generally, when you do some sinful activities, you may get an immediate reaction, or sometimes the reaction will take a while. It may even take lifetimes to manifest. And when it is not manifested, it can produce what we call kutam. Kutam means the proclivity. So when you perform a sinful act, that will create a propensity to want to sin again. That comes from aprarabdha or kutam. So the more one associates with prohibited activities, the more his attachment grows. We have to be very careful. And faith in the Supreme diminishes. So it's we have to be very careful about this, and we have to understand. And this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita also. I'll read that, very famous. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krodha vijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. So this is the progression of one's associating with the wrong things and then progressing towards committing sin. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammoha smriti vibramaha, smriti bramshad buddhinasho, buddhinasha pranasyati. And then when you cannot fulfill your desires, you get angry. And from anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. So therefore, how we associate is very important, because it ultimately leads to attachment for such activities and a reduction in approaching the Supreme. We replace it, we replace, why? I always go to temple, I'm not getting much anyway, right? Why should I keep doing it? I'm much better off doing something else where I get instant result, instant gratification, so I rather pursue those kind of activities. And so the mind plays a trick, the material energy forces the foolish person to think that why I should go and waste my time, I can do other things, So there are many people that I've encountered who used to come to the temple, then when they went out into the society, they became very wealthy because of the association they had. Materialistic people who allowed them to develop more funds and became wealthy, and then they made coming to temple a second priority. It wasn't priority. Before that they were coming constantly. Then after couple of years I asked them, what do you do on the weekends? And one of them said, Prabhu, I have to meet these people, my clients. And what do you do? Well, we go out and play golf, Sunday morning, swinging a stick in a big yard. and then thinking so much pleasure they are getting. It's a sad situation, but that's a reality. Now from verses 5 to 10 we see this young girl, marriageable, and it's interesting, she's been left alone at home. Obviously the parents didn't know, but it's also interesting because I was wondering when this activity took place. Now King Yadu means it's probably in the different yuga, not in Kali Yuga, so it was interesting. They didn't think anyone would come, but a group of young men came and they were visiting to ask her hand in marriage, basically. And she wanted to make sure that they will get a good impression. So therefore she took it upon herself and she felt obliged to the suitors, and so she invited them in and prepared food for them. Now obviously nowadays you can't do that, right? This is called asking for trouble nowadays, so you can't do that. A single lady nowadays, she can't do that. You must have someone, because people don't have culture anymore. They will take advantage and stuff like that will happen. So while she was preparing food, she was husking the rice, so she was trying to get the rice, husking the rice. And so when she had this conch shell bracelets, and so while she was husking, they were banging with each other and they made so much noise. And then she felt, oh, I shouldn't be making so much noise because then they will know that there's no one in the home. So she didn't want to be, she didn't want them to know that they were not that wealthy also. So even then, at that time, people were worried about being wealthy and poor. So therefore she removed the bangles, but she left 2 in each wrist. Maybe it looked good, so she continued. But even the 2 were making so much noise, and so finally she took and left 1 in each wrist. And it appears that the Avadut was watching all this, or maybe he was hearing all that, and he learned that from the whole incident, he was thinking, well, if there are too many people living together, then there's bound to be quarreling, fighting and stuff like that. Even with 2, as it's stated, there will be some discussions and disagreements. So then he recommends to live alone, And I'm sure many of you have experienced that in your college days when you were living in your student housing, if you had, I remember living in student housing. There's an apartment with 6 rooms, so there are 6 students living there, sharing a common kitchen and a lounge area like that. So we plan ourselves so that we don't meet each other and stuff like that. Otherwise we end up, talking and and not getting to do our homework or schoolwork, like that. Generally at the end of the semester after exams, then you want to hang around and talk. Otherwise there's a tendency to just talk about sweet nothing sometimes, and we waste a lot of time instead of trying to cultivate our knowledge in whatever we're doing. In the purport it is mentioned that jnanis are like that. They like to cultivate a lot of knowledge, and Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that the jnanis are like munis. Munis are people who can, Prabhupada says, they agitate their mind so much in various ways for mental speculation. And generally they don't come to a factual conclusion. But they think so many ways. Sometimes we also overthink, Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Giridhari Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shri Shintai Chaitanya Chandra, Shri Shintai Gaura Chandra Ki Jai, Iskcon Guru Vinda Ki Jai. Right? Sometimes even as devotees, when we come across a simple statement, we want to overanalyze, So Prabhupada always says, just do it. Just chant. Yeah. So every Muni, Prabhupada mentions that they like to come with different angle of vision, No, actually it's this way and that way. And unless a Muni differs from another Muni, he's not called a Muni. He's like, oh, you don't know anything, go away, like that. But a devotee is also known as a Muni, but he's known as a Stita Dhira. He's sober and he knows. But he doesn't agitate unnecessarily because he understands that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and how to do devotional service. Therefore, when we associate, we have to understand what is this person's consciousness is, what kind of speculation they do, because it's important in our practice, who we associate with. The Jnanis and Karmis, Prabhupada says, do not depend on the mercy of Krishna. They don't. Devotees do, right? Oftentimes in our life, in circumstances that are challenging, we look up to Krishna. We pray to Krishna. We talk to devotees. We want to get some meaningful understanding, answers like that. So we're always taking shelter of the Supreme Lord. Whereas ordinary people don't. And Prabhupada mentions, Jnanis and scholars do not. They depend on their own knowledge. I know everything, and their reasoning. And therefore, because they depend on their own knowledge and reasoning, they are not considered devotees. So we should understand they are not devotees. And the other point is, if we do not associate properly and we associate with Jnanis and Karmis, then we will consider our karma and jnana to be very important. Even if we say we are devotees, subtly we think, I'm better, I'm born in a good family. Hey man, I got a better degree, I'm better, why even think about it, I'm much better than you. So therefore, offenses at the feet of the sadhu happens like that, because one is very proud of one's karma, jnana. So sadhu ninda, so we have to be very careful. So even worldly attachment, sometimes devotees have some attachment in this material world. It contradicts to the acceptance of Krishna's position. We are attached to some science, right? Knowledge, and then moon landing, stuff like that. So we are attached to those things. So therefore, it is said that even those kind of attachment it contradicts and it disputes Krishna's supremacy. It is, right? Certainly it affects you and you think, I don't accept that. And by saying I don't accept that, in the statement of scripture, you are actually saying I don't accept Krishna's supremacy, like that. And therefore, when you can't accept that, what is the result? You cannot surrender. You cannot surrender. Not possible to surrender, therefore. So therefore, Prabhupada mentions association with non-devotees is bound to produce disrespect of other devotees also. And therefore we find fault. So we have to be very careful and avoid such association. We have to. We don't know, mostly we think it's okay, but we have to be very careful. Materialistic association are two types. Asat Sangha, two types. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives two. He says, one is association with women or men, and association with those devoid of devotion to the Lord. Okay. Now, when we associate with women or men, it's of three types. So he categorizes associating with one's wife not according to Vedic tradition. That means they don't want to follow any rules. In our tradition, it is only for procreation, otherwise not so intimately. And then the other thing is associating with women outside of marriage for the purpose of engaging in illicit activities. So this is called Stri Sangha. So if a man approaches a woman with the evil intent of trying to get something, it's called Stri Sangha. But if the woman does it, then it's called Purusha Sangha. Like that. And then the third one is associating with men who are too attached to women also. Or women associating with women who are too attached to men, same thing. Huh? So we have to be very careful, we have to consider these things. We have to know a person well, and then we have to associate with them in the proper manner. Yeah. Huh? Otherwise, they will influence us. Sometimes they may be very generous, very charitable, but they may be womanizers. So we get caught in the trap. Oh, he's so kind, he helped me, he paid for this, how can I not help this person? So a very good example is, not in that way, but a very good example of associating with someone who's been nice to someone is Karna in Mahabharata. So he came for the, was it the challenge? They had a competition, the Pandavas were, I guess it was a graduation thing, and they were showing how powerful they were in their warfare to their guru, Dronacharya. And so Karna happens to come, and then he challenges, and then they then say, who are you? If you are not a Kshatriya, you cannot do it. So he's been raised by a charioteer, and so he somehow doesn't qualify. At that time, Duryodhana, who doesn't like the Pandavas, immediately says, I make him a king of this. And so he makes him, and then he is qualified to practice. And I think at that time Draupadi says no, he's not allowed because he's not a Kshatriya. She refuses. So therefore he doesn't work. Now because Duryodhana stood up for Karna, ever since then Karna would not dismiss Duryodhana. Duryodhana is a very evil person. He's planning and plan after plan in trying to kill the Pandavas. But Karna, knowing, even though he knows that, he also takes the same course of Duryodhana in going against the Pandavas. And basically because he thinks he is beholden to this person. And then he associates, and the more he associates, he becomes very degraded. And even when Krishna approaches him and tells him to come to join them, he refuses. He says, I'm not interested. Even Kunti tells him, his own mother tells him, you are my oldest son. He says, no, I'm always beholden to this man who recognized me. So you can see how one's good intelligence can be covered when your intelligence is not when you associate with the wrong people, actually. Therefore, it's very important, again, we need to be very careful. Why? Because unfortunately, we are not so advanced that we can, deflect all kinds of people's consciousness. The material energy is so powerful that it can permeate our protections also. With a constant exposure to the sound vibrations which are not favorable, eventually our defenses wear down. Because the material energy is so powerful and we think we can handle it. And so we should be very careful like that. So we should be very, very cautious in the way we associate. Even when we go out and preach also. When we are preaching, we have to be very careful because we do not know to what extent we can extend ourselves that way. And then the other categories, the three types who we don't associate are people who are devoid of devotion. They are association with Mayavadis, impersonalists, that's one. Associating with pretenders, right? People who say, I'm devotee, but actually they are not. And associating with atheists also. Of course, we don't associate Mayavadis because they think the Lord and the living entities, we are both all material, and we are temporary like that. And when they come to the temple, they see the deity form as also material. So therefore, we shouldn't associate with them. Then there are the pretenders. They don't have any devotion or renunciation, but they sometimes live like devotees also. So Prabhupada gives example how when he has seen in his own life how this man who lives with his family, every morning he changes into a sannyasi outfit and he goes out and begs. And people who see him give him donations and stuff, so they think, oh, he is a devotee, like that. So Prabhupada says they just pretend to be devotees to make a living. And sometimes you can also see they may also be giving Srimad Bhagavatam Katha, and they may be so good, right? So expert in the way, the sweet talking, and devotees also can get bewildered, right? Like who was listening to the Mayavadis speak in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime? Mukunda, yeah. And what Mahaprabhu said, I don't want to see your face, go away. Right? Yeah. So we have to be very careful. Then if we do that, and then maybe Mahaprabhu will say, I don't want to see your face, like that. So we should be very careful. And then there are people who try to imitate, no? Imitate who? Haridas Thakur. Everybody knows that, right? So we can't imitate Haridas Thakur. Prabhupada says they imitate externally, but privately they are indulging in sense gratification, yeah? So what kind of mentality is it? Dusta mana, a bad attitude like that. Now even atheists you'll find, they claim to be to be devotees, and in public people will accept them. But we should know, by talking to them, you will understand these people are atheistic. And so what should you do? You should reject such people. And that's not considered an offense if they are atheistic. Now there are sometimes when we do that, some devotees also will say, why are you criticizing these people who are bad? You shouldn't do that. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, one who criticizes a person who gives up these bad people should also be rejected and avoided. So we should be careful, no? If someone says this person is an atheist or done, we should listen, and then we should slowly give up the association. So serious devotee means asat sangha eva Vaishnava achar, tyaga eva, asat sangha tyaga, you give up. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says if you give up bad association, it will not cause offenses. Now, of course, we should take shelter and associate with devotees who are practicing, devotees who are very sincere. And in associating, we should be very careful about criticizing devotees or rejecting them without understanding who they are. Otherwise, we will be, like we will commit Nama Parat, Bahu Janma Karyade Shravana Kirtanam Tabutanapaya Krishna Prada Premadanam. Many lifetimes you can take and you'll never be able to taste the holy name if you offend a devotee, a very senior or pure devotee like that. One must be able to distinguish, otherwise we do not know how to associate properly also. In the 4th canto, it is said, Narada Muni mentions every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate toward him. And when he meets someone equal to himself, he should make friendship with him. In this way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of this material world. But generally when we meet someone more qualified, what do? We find faults. We look for faults and say, no, this is the problem. Like that. And when we meet someone equal, we compete with each other. Hey, I did this, I did that. I am so good. Actually it's because of me that the world is rotating, Right? Like that. And then the last one is when one is less than us, we exploit them in the materialistic way. Hey, you don't know anything. Come here. You wash my feet. Cook for me. Make my bed. Yeah. It is. It's like that. So you have to be very careful. As devotees, we should have the 6 loving exchanges. What are the 6 loving exchanges we should do? Give in charity and accept charity. And charity doesn't mean have to be only money. It's many things, right? You can give in charity your clothing, your books, so many things. Our charity to common people is the holy name. We give them holy name. Yeah. And then what's the other one? Give in charity, accept in charity, then revealing one's mind in confidence and inquiring. Yeah. So one who's more advanced, we have an association with them and discuss those things. And then the last one, that's it. Prasadam, that everybody knows. But you have to invite people, no? Right? And then you can give people prasadam and they can get... And prasadam also doesn't mean have to be consuming prasadam. It could be a prasad from the deity, garlands, chandan, so many things, outfit like that, yeah. So when you live with devotees, all contradictory or contrary situations are easily avoided because we have a common understanding, common goals. Whereas here, when jnanis, they live together, they don't have, they end up quarreling. No, I am right, no, I am right, just like Prabhupada gives the example of 2 men quarreling so much, right? Paper and scissors. So they were in the middle of the boat and they quarreled so much, the boat capsized and then they drowned. So while they were drowning, the guy who was going down last, he puts his hand out and puts fingers like that. So even when they are dying, they are so attached to this kind of nonsense, So, but when you are with devotees, Kadayantas cha mam nityam tusyanti cha ramanti cha. We are always talking about Krishna, encouraging one another. We should encourage. If someone is having difficulty, we find out how we can help them, always encourage. Then we can all sit together, satatam kirtayanto mam. Then we can chant together, glories of Lord. Now, if we have difficulty, Ramanujacharya actually told his disciples that if you cannot purify yourself, right, he said, by any endeavor whatsoever, you know what he said? Just go and sit next to a Vaishnava. After a while, you'll achieve all auspiciousness. By observing the pure character of a devotee, in a short time, the person's mind gets purified. That's why it's important to go and chant with advanced devotees. Because their association purifies us. You do not understand how much they are purifying you, but they are purifying you nonetheless. Many years ago, I read a book on Bodhisattva, the Buddhist philosophy. So it says, one who have reached Buddha, they call it Buddha, that means enlightened stage. He actually influences people 800 miles around. So he is, and just imagine, pure devotees, right? So therefore, it's very important to chant with the devotees, and just don't have to say anything, just sit with them and simply hearing the vibration. So by observing them, our heart will change, our mind will change, our attachment to sense enjoyment will change. And so that was his advice. So remember, 7 types of worldly people you should avoid: Mayavadis, atheists, sense enjoyers, and then who? Those fond of the sense enjoyers, and then womanizers, or menizers, and then those who are hypocritically devout, externally they show, but internally they are not. And the last one is foolish people, All right. So I will finish here. Any questions, or you want to comment, you feel free to do so. Yes, Prabhu.
Do you have any insight on associating with brand new people? Because I'm not so advanced or mature enough to be able to take their association for long periods of time. Sometimes it feels like it drags me down a little bit.
Oh, okay. In that case, if you meet a new person, bring them to another person who can handle them. Yeah. So just talk to them in a couple of minutes. Encourage them or say something nice to them, and then bring them and say, look, here's a person who's an expert, and you take a humble position. So by doing that, you eventually will be able to do what the other person is doing. Yeah. Yes, Mother Guru Bhakti. Wise words, please.
You alluded to anxiety just in passing. But if you would address it, because in the devotee community there is a lot of anxiety, which is
mental.
Yeah, and people either they don't recognize it or they feel it's
insecure.
Yeah,
and
so
they feel it's a stigma.
Yes, and so it kind of impedes the devotional service. So even you mentioned it only in passing, but I think it needs to be maybe saying something to help them become aware of the problem, and then what are the steps they would take to improve it, because ultimately that is holding them back in their practice.
Yeah, that's a very good point, thank you. As Mother Guru Bhakti was saying, how there's so many devotees in our society, we have anxiety issues. It's based on insecurity, actually, not knowing what they are doing is right. All this comes about, in short, what I will say is, they don't know how to associate, and they are afraid to associate. And they don't know how to reach out. But actually, there are so many opportunities are given by our devotional community here, where there's many senior Vaishnavas, that they should call, open their hearts out and say, this is what I'm going through. There's no stigma. Everything is confidential, actually. At least I know. Those who have spoken to me, it's in confidential. Yeah. There's so many things that you can sometimes write a book. But this is important, so that we can help them become serious devotees who can take proper shelter of other devotees as well as the holy name and the deities, and not feel minimized, or not feel there is a stigma, wrongdoing like that. No. So, I mean, we can actually give a seminar on these things, how to take shelter, how to overcome one's inhibitions and so on. But it starts off with, actually, it really starts off with chanting nicely. And if you have trouble chanting, again I emphasize, chant with a senior devotee. There are many nice devotees in our congregation who chant very nicely. Come to Mangalarti, you can see a few of them here. If not, you call them separately and say, I want to chant with you. And chant with them. You'll see, within a few weeks, you will change. It's a positive thing, and I've seen it and I know it works. So I'll stop there, and you can always contact the devotees. Thank you very much. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Premanandi. And if you really have an issue with anxiety problem, go and see a doctor also. Yeah. They can give you some medicine that may help.